We've got a really good panel discussion, and we're going to be talking about how we can automate travel and expenses. The corporate card advantage, and with Koen, we got Sophie, Christian, and Gijs. We've got a fantastic panel lined up with experts from Personio, Egencia, and ExpenseBrain. They'll be diving in deep. You know, technology sometimes, guys, is not always on our side, but right now it is. So if we talk about this, the next session right now, we're talking about corporate cards back again and the top-tier travel and expense solutions that's changing the game. From simplifying processes to boosting compliance and employee satisfaction, this session is packed with insights how finance and technology can help you stay ahead of competition. Now, hope you guys are ready. Hope you guys are leaning in because this panel is going to be really good. So I'll be welcoming the panel, and let's get started.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion Automating Travel and Expense, the Corporate Card Advantage. My name is Sophie and I will be your host today, and I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers to you. We know each other for a long time as partners, of course, but for you, for the people at home, I'm happy to introduce. So first we have Gijs Swaans. Commercial lead and global sales manager at Egencia, a leading travel solution, and Gijs will bring a lot of knowledge on how to streamline travel management for companies. Next we have Koen Stam, head of Benelux at Personio, a leading HR solution, and Gijs will bring his perspective on how to increase employee engagement and satisfaction. And finally, we're excited to announce Christian Elsesser, managing partner from ExpenseBrain, and he has a deep expertise in integrating travel and expense solutions, and he can tell us all about how to be better compliant and also gain financial control. Throughout the sessions, we want to make it as engaging as possible, so I encourage you to put your comments or questions in the chat, and we will be answering those questions in the Q&A at the end. So let's dive in, guys. Welcome for coming to the studio. So I think the scene has been set, so we're going to talk about corporate cards. So when you think of business travel, corporate cards have always been around. Now, these days, thanks to digitization, but also innovation in payments, the idea of using corporate cards as a sole source of truth for expense data is becoming more and more normal. How would you say how this trend goes, and also when you look at, for example, more expense solutions offering their own corporate cards, what would be, in your opinion, the benefits, but also the challenges that come along with this offer? And yes, I will start with you.
Thank you. Cards, it's always been a thing, especially in travel, because it really depends on company policies, right? Many companies don't always find it good that their employees have a card because typically of misusage. So when we start deploying those cards for organizations, usually the big advantage here is that because travelers feel trusted, right? They have the card solution, they are going on the road, they don't need to do their own expenses, which usually saves a lot of hassle for them, right? Instead of expensing yourself. For myself, I've been in business travel this week. I have a corporate card. For me, it saves me a lot of time and hassle. Instead of expensing it myself with my personal card or making any other type of invoices I need to collect. So from that perspective, the big advantage here for travelers, it's user experience. Secondly, for my company, it streamlines the process of payment, meaning automatically the charges will be on my expense report, and that of course for me and for the company gives them the right data to apply the data, reconciliate, etc.
Okay, thank you, Gijs. So I take away streamlining data, and then user experience would be your main remarks there. Koen?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, also from the HR perspective, of course, I always like to see it from the employee perspective. Of course, myself, I'm also a traveler, but I think what is interesting to see in the market, whether it is HR, whether it is finance, whether it is travel and expenses, is like you still see a lot of companies out there, also here in Europe, who are poorly automated and using fragmented tools to do so. And obviously, I think the upcoming of the digital cards really increases and enhances like the usage by us as employees. And I think this is a big advantage But don't forget that still out there, if you see how much legacy is out there, the experience for you and for myself personally as well, and I've seen it also in my previous companies, is still not up to par. So I think it's great that we're now also talking about this topic, but there's still so much need to be done to really give all our employees, which we are ourselves as well, really that experience, because you do want to have that seamless experience. And I think with corporate cards, with of course the flexibility, the dynamics of the amounts which you can put on those cards, etc., you can make it really available to everyone. But I think, I don't know if you agree, but they're still like quite ahead before everyone really can benefit of this one. But like, yeah, really looking forward that it's becoming more mainstream for a lot of companies.
Okay, thanks, Koen. So I take away user experience also key, but also education is needed because not everybody's there yet to see the advantage through.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Christian.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. From my perspective, adding to my to the previous speakers, I think we can also talk about the personas. I mean, you were talking about the user perspective and the user benefits, and I think if you look in the companies, first of all, I would totally agree. There's a lot of potential still there to be unlocked in terms of automating payment and digitalizing payment. But there's also different kind of personas in the company, and that's what we need to think about. Like you have blue-collar workers, which might not necessarily have a credibility for their own corporate card. So depending on the contract type you choose for a corporate card, you can also take a virtual card and have it case by case being created. That's one aspect to think about, and on the other aspect, it's really it's also driving compliance, because if you have like a case-by-case credit card, you can, for instance, lock out special spend categories or even merchant categories, like you don't want to go to your people or you don't want your people to go to specific shops or something. You can block this out or enable it as you please. So there's a lot of flexibility, empowering the payment process. It enables, and I think we were talking about this, guys. It's about having those expense line items on from the credit card to the expense, the reconciliation, and it's also like driving a bit in certain ways compliance.
Okay, thank you, Christian. So taking away that depending on who the card will be using, the setup will be different. Is there anything maybe you want to share about the freedom that you would give to employees as well? Good and bad?
I would totally get back to the company's culture. The freedom is really something I think that's really deep-rooted into the company's DNA, and you really need to look at it from a supplier perspective, like what's the customer, what's he's going to take care of. However, there might be, if you look at this merchant category table, I think there are 800 line items. You can maybe pick some you really don't want to have. That's something you can do, but then again, talk to the HR guys in those companies, in your prospects, and yeah, but maybe HR, hey, that's your cue, I guess.
No, but I think we all know now, especially in these days, 2024 and beyond, like retention of our people is utmost importance, and the experience we as employers give towards employees is crucial. So I think you have something in hand here as well to offer towards employees and to maybe give a little bit more of that trust, because to build a stronger bond, to be a better employer by providing these kind of digital solutions. Yeah. But again, then you need to embrace them, obviously. That's for sure. But I don't know, Gijs, what?
Yes.
Yeah, to allude to that, especially with the virtual card element here. So let's go back to the traveler, right? What they don't want is to pay themselves for what they do in travel, right? I don't want to pay for my flight because hundreds of euros. Those hotel rates go crazy. So I mean, easily for a trip it costs 1,000 euros. I don't want to pay for that myself, right? So that's the essential thing. Then you have the contradiction of a company that says, I'm not going to give my employees a corporate card, but you know, there's so many, let's say, different solutions like a virtual company card, which then per booking can create actually a single virtual card. And that's something that you can control, right? I am allowing my people to say, listen, you can charge on this virtual card, the hotel room, plus breakfast, plus dinner. Or maybe some other stuff, like have fun, it's 500 euros, do whatever you want, right? So you can control as a company. So there is quite some flexibility, but the essential thing here, travelers don't like to pay themselves for travel. So.
No, thank you. I think great insights. So takeaway would be like, let's give employees the trust to build a better relationship between employer and employees, but also limit and or make clear guidelines and limit what they can spend and what they cannot spend, because if they don't have to pay out of pocket, that is a nice perk to have, right? So, yeah. All right. Going to the next question. So companies often use different systems to manage their travel and expenses, and this is logic because in most cases companies have very specific needs. This brings us to best of breed solutions in travel and expense. Now, yes, from your perspective, how do you see the role of a best of breed solution like Egencia when integrating with expense solutions? And I think we will be discussing here integrations and data flows. So we have prepared for the audience at home a diagram. For the audience at home, it could be a bit too small. Apologies for that, but I'm sure that the guys here will explain a bit better how it works. So yes, starting with you.
Yeah, so let's say from a legacy perspective, a lot of companies in their own industries have been doing very well what they do well, right? Like an expense company, like a travel company, like an HR company, right? Everybody does its own thing, but it's always been very siloed, right? Nowadays, we see more and more blending situations where companies have different demands, right? So from a corporate perspective, I demand that my travel supplier would also provide specific data to that other third party or back to my ERP, right? So in this case, what you see a lot is that the blending element and therefore the connectivity or providing APIs is a key element here to actually drive that data streams. So simple as what we do, right, with MXP, with Egencia, what we've built, we really provided that connectivity in an open framework, an open API setup where we connect, right? In this case, and especially on the flowchart, what you see here, right? You see all the different boxes, right? You got HR, you got the ERP system, you got the expense system, you got the travel environment. And in this case, how can we connect those boxes? We need to kill the complexity. We need to, let's say, delete those silos. And therefore, I think that all the connectivity and the blending here comes in. The key thing here is what is the source of truth, right? In this case, is it the corporate card, which I think is pretty much the driver. But in this case, and what you see on the framework here, MXP is a key driver here, right? You need to get specific profile data. You need to push back specific data to the finance system of the organization. But on the other hand, the travelers need to do their thing, meaning booking a trip, right? So it's the data flow from HR to MXP. MXP feeds the travel agency. Then the data comes back, automated, pre-populated information. And I think that's the one essential thing here. You need to break the silos. Because if you don't do that, it becomes more complex. You don't want to be all the parties on their own island. Yeah. And I think that's the main essential thing here is that you cannot do it alone. And you see more and more companies saying, hey, I was a travel company, now I'm becoming a travel and expense company, or even a travel payment and expense company, right? So you need to rethink, the industry needs to rethink itself on how can we be more in the forefront. Could be, I'm going to connect on a, let's say, fully automated way with two different companies, or I'm going to use my proprietary technology to do that, or you're going to use a white label. But at any point, you need to build that connectivity, otherwise you're lost.
Okay, thank you, yes. So yeah, I think silos have been discussed, so we need to break them down. No doubt data is important, the right data flows. I think, Christian, question to you, you're an expert in integrating travel and expense solutions.
Well, thank you for the experts. From my perspective, what most of our envisioning is kind of end-to-end integration. And if I mean end-to-end, it's like really you start the process in the HR with the user provisioning, like the master data, like you're Sophie, you're female, that's your cost center, and your date of birth, da. And you want to have that ended up somewhere in the process, like in the digital archive of your expenses. And that should be like seamless, not redundant, and it should be automated in order to work. And in order to make that happen, what we tend to do is we start really by looking at what are the sourcing systems and what are the target systems. Where does the data move from which system to which system, and also in which use case? Because you have a lot of different use cases there. Like, I don't know, from Egencia, you're pre-populating travel data, like the dates, the travel booking measures, and so on. But there are also other use cases in terms of employee master data management. One big thing is, and this is really heavy for compliance, new entrants in the company and also exits. So if a member of your company is going to exit, you want to make sure that he does not have access anymore to, let's say, Egencia, to the platform or to the expenses, because there's a central payment maybe behind it, which he would be still eligible to use, and so the company pays travel, which he is actually not doing for a current employer, basically. So and what we do is we look at the, for instance, in this example, at the HR system, and then also in the finance system to say if we want to make clear this, have this end-to-end integration, we need to match the data which are in the HR system and the finance system. And one example we had there is, for instance, and this is really talking two different systems, like one HR system from company A, another FI system from company B, let's say Workday and SAP. They had a different setup in their employee ID structure. So it was a global employee ID in the HR field, but it was a vendor number in the FI arena. So, and when looking at it, you will finally end up with not matching data. And so we really need to go, and that's really, yeah, it's a headache in most cases. But once you're sorted through, you can identify those gaps, and then you can think about, okay, how to mitigate them in terms of how do we find a mapping table, or how do we make sure that the data we need are actually updated and regularly and frequently available. So that's what we try to do, like really to go to the proverbial devil in the detail.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe jumping into that, because you said about compliance, right? And if someone leaves the company, what happens then, right? So imagine if everything needs to be done manually, right? So there's one person from HR saying, let me send an email because this person I think is, oh, actually he actually left last week. Okay, but does he still has his card? Does he still have access to the travel portal? So would he still be able to book travel? So from a fraud perspective, right, you need to cut that line at some point. So I think, therefore, again, connectivity plays a crucial role, right? Having something, a weekly mapped file from your HR system to a travel tool on a weekly basis, that doesn't work, especially nowadays, right? So the moment you say in your HR system, stop, red cross, then on the other side, it should happen as well. Exactly. So again, from a fraud perspective, that also plays a very key role. Yeah.
And maybe, again, I think we are discussing here is, of course, like the back end side, how important it is to have this data flow. But I think best of breed also comes into play when it comes to the employee satisfaction and usage. Because again, like not everyone has or corporate cards or now virtual cards yet. Hopefully more and more will be used, right? So as well, like me as an employee, I also want to have a very clear view. I want to have one view in my HR tool, ideally, where I see all my expenses which I created, because eventually it needs to be paid out, hopefully on time. So I want to see the right data, so eventually also I got, of course, paid back the right amount, including my salary on time. So also from the user experience, therefore best of breed is so important to have that experience again for the employee.
Okay. And if I may use just one example.
Absolutely.
So 2 years ago, we had a great new customer. Actually, it was a customer of MXP, and in their previous situation, they work with a travel management company that wasn't, let's say, capable of providing that connectivity. They didn't have an API with MXP. So from a travel user experience, again, what you're saying, it was a broken chain. So people needed to do this. They had multiple tools. It didn't flow through. Once I start a trip in Mobilexpense getting an approval, I wasn't automatically forwarded to my travel tool. Therefore, I needed to re-enter everything again. Things go manual. Right. So in this case, what we've done, and this was a very good, it's a very good use case, because with the car provider, with MXP, with the customer, and with us, we sat together. We had implemented this customer. It's a very large global customer in 1.5 months' time, because we sat together. We had that connectivity already set up. So therefore, connecting the change was much easier, and that actually was a very good success case.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, yes. Yeah. I think that's a really nice example of how we can actually, together with all our best-of-breed solutions, create added value for the customer. Moving on to the next question. So we already talked about integrations and the importance of data. Next topic would be when talking about the adoption of new technology, and I'm looking at Koen, from an HR perspective, what do you think, or how do you think that corporate credit cards and best-of-breed solutions will increase employee engagement, but also more in general, what do you think is crucial from an HR perspective to adopt new technologies?
Yeah, in the end, any technology, of course, also when it comes to your travel experience, you as a employee, it needs to be as seamless as possible. We all know how it is when working with Apple or the big brands. I mean, it needs to be usable without any manual. So that's the experience which I expect. And in this group, I think I'm even like, at least from the gentlemen, I say I'm the youngest. But again, I'm also still a millennial. So if we look at the different generations, of course, they already expect a difference when it comes to how they perceive a travel. And they do expect travel when they work for an employer. So I think that adoption is key. And we sometimes forget that when it comes to adoption, it's also very important that we as vendors and eventually also providers as employers, we need to be very clear when it comes to our documentation, how that works, right? And sometimes we also forget that we documented once on our Confluence, Notion, and we never repeat it once again towards our employees. And I have just one example myself. I mean, I'm lucky. I mean, I'm responsible for the Benelux, so I don't travel much. Brussels, that's like for me like a treat, and which means I travel typically only in the Netherlands and Belgium. So once I need to travel to Munich, to Dublin, to one of our offices, or I don't use it that much. So once I go into that tool, it needs to also, for me, I'm tech savvy, I dare to say, but still it needs to work as seamless as possible. So for me, it's also important that HR teams or the teams who providing those services, you need to keep iterating that message towards the people. So the moment they are using it, it is as smooth as possible, because otherwise it's also directly a glitch in their experience. And that's just from the booking of the travel. And then I don't talk about, for instance, when you have maybe a virtual card with a certain limit, but you still need to reimburse because, of course, you go over the limit when you book something, or you want to expense that little extra dinner which you're doing on that location. And also there, you want to have a seamless experience for eventually getting it reimbursed and expensed for you as a person. So I think like the easiness of use, the way we make sure it's really properly documented, and we keep repeating how that process can work. And therefore, again, coming back towards our best of breed, I believe so strongly, also ourselves, we can't, as an HR provider, we are trying to digitalize all the employee journeys for our customers, but we are not experts in traveling or in expenses. So we need to work together to offer eventually that seamless experience towards employees, which sounds so easy. It isn't, but therefore it's so important to work closely together. As teams.
To bring the same message.
Chris
wanted to add.
I just wanted to add on this what you just said, like the user experience. But if you're not using the tool so often, and then you have all these nitty gritty glitches, so to call them, like the card limit was maxed or whatever. I mean, there are a lot of there's a lot of examples we can think of. So I was saying before, like look at the devil in the detail, but also like look at the overarching use cases you wanna solve. Actually, you want to solve user problems with that tool. Not only look at the internal finance perspective, streamlining, compliance, efficiency, automation, but also keep the user's mindset in mind, so to say. What does he want to achieve? And that's something we tend, and that's what we also, and I think we're a bit prone as a consulting agency as well to forget that at times. But that's something we really try to get back to our customers and say, what is the user perspective in this? And in all these groups, it's really like there's IT, there's HR, there's finance, and so on, all those specialists, but users rarely are in the very beginning of any implementation or integration project. So let's bring them in.
Nice insight, thank you.
What we tend to forget, so we talk about a lot of departments, right? We all talk about that every typical employee follows the rules that they need to provide that or use that specific tool. Trust me, there are many cases it doesn't happen, right? So the thing is, user experience builds trust. When you are able to steer your people towards the policy, the mandatory solution you use as a company, that actually creates better company results. So a few years ago, we did a research with, we supported with Harvard Business Review. What they've done, they actually found out, and the results really were very good, was if you have a strong company policy, travel policy, and let's say as a traveler, I feel I'm trusted when I travel. I have convenient solutions, it's easy to use, perhaps I have a card. When I go travel, I feel supported, right? Meaning, I'm relaxed, I'm allowed to actually stay a day before because I can rest because the next meeting, the next day is very important, right? Imagine, you need to fly economy class to US. Okay, maybe that's critical from a sustainability perspective, but let's say from a more hierarchical perspective, sometimes that plays a role. But as a traveler, as an employee, I want to be making sure I'm confident that I'm doing that meeting. And if I'm doing that well, because I'm supported by my company, it impacts actually the company results. So we're talking here about HR needs to do something right, or IT needs to do something right. It's in fact impacting your company results. And that's sometimes not even visible. But again, it does have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Employees becoming more productive and can focus on what they really need and love to do, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, guys. So coming to our almost last question, when we already had the integrations, we have talked about how adopting new technologies, but then diving into the real finance side of things. Real-time visibility in spending empower finance teams to adjust and optimize our budgets. What do you think are the key trends, or what are the key trends you see today, but also what do you think for the future will be the way how companies manage their travel budgets, but also budgets in general? Maybe yes, or
Well,
Christian? Yeah, Christian, you want to go? Yeah.
We all jumped directly to that question, yeah.
Important one.
Immediate answer, exactly. To be honest with you, I don't have a very clear and crisp answer on this one, because I think the future holds a lot of different, not to say challenges, but perspectives in place. However, what we see is with, and you mentioned it in terms of real time, we have a real time view. We have a much better view because we capture a lot of more data points by using the credit card than just scanning a receipt and manually enter it. Okay, this was a parking receipt or whatever. I think that's also one of the foundation for, and we didn't talk about this, but also for sustainability management. So CO2 values, and I mean, you might be laughing, but at some time, and I bring this example every day, like you have a fueling receipt, like you fill up your rental car, okay, that's some liters, that's super, that's diesel, whatever, or electric charge, that transfers into CO2 value, okay, that's fine. But the Snickers bar you buy with it at the petrol station, at the gas station, that also has a CO2 imprint, and that's something. Yeah, it's a bit laughable. I agree, but I think maybe not next year or the year after, but maybe in 5 to 7 years, I don't know. We will have that level of granularity in our reportings because it's going to get much more important that we can track those exciting data items. Yeah. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
No, it's actually an interesting one, like, because eventually, and it comes back to best of breed, if we capture those data points, and just imagine you are in your HR tool in your mobile app, and you can also kind of reward people in companies of their sustainable footprint. And if you capture these kind of things, and again, like a company like ourselves as well, we are, like, sustainability is such highly rated in our organization because this is the way you attract talent, especially when you identify yourself with brands like ourselves, right?
Yeah. From an auditing perspective, I mean, we are always talking now about AI-based auditing of expenses, like receipts and so on, and you know, doing the nitty-gritties on the receipt level. But what I also think is what's going to happen is the more contextual approach in doing the audit. Like you have, I don't know, 5 different receipt categories in one expense statement, or maybe across several expense statements. It will also be nice. So the more data points we can gather by usage of credit card and maybe other means which are going to be upcoming, we are able to have a much more better, maybe an ex post reporting, yes, okay, but it will be much more contextual and much more gives much more visibility to auditing people in terms of driving compliance and so on, for misusage, for fraud, even in the very details of the expense statements, which nowadays just pass by. You don't even notice. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And coming back first to, well, I think there are a few things. Gamification, right? As a company, you want to make sure that your people follow the rules. How do you do that? Well, you need to give them a special treat, right? You need to be nice. How can we do that? So I think that's one crucial thing, but looking at the sustainable element here, we're all talking about dollars, right? Money, money, money. The thing is, with the, let's say, sustainable change, what will happen is we're going to move towards CO2 budgets rather than just dollar budgets, right? As an employee or as a company, first, you assign a specific amount to any given CO2 kilograms, right? So it means that travelers will be more and more, or employees will be more and more, let's say, audited somewhat internally by what's your footprint, what are we allowing as a company, therefore what you do as an individual. So the impact will be much bigger. But in, let's say in return, what do they get back for that? And I think the piece of gamification here is an interesting one. Yeah, will you give them a card? Okay, but up to what level, right? So I think there's a close connection here between you need to give them the treat, but you want to stay in policy, right?
Yep.
So you need to keep them within the lines, and that's sometimes a hard thing. But we're moving towards more CO2 budgets rather than just dollars, and I think that's a key thing. And also making maybe the jump to AI. Yes, it's relevant in a way because to be predictive, right? As a finance manager, you can drill down and have someone or a special department drilling down to Excel files or other files or your Power BI. It's all great, fantastic, but you're gonna get crazy at some point. As a manager of a team, HR manager or whatever you are, you want to know what will happen next year or based on what we've done last year. And if we increase budget by 10%, what will be the typical behavior? That's what the output you want to get. And that's typically where, let's say in the coming years, from a trend perspective, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
I need to give an entry. What will be the impact? What will happen? That's something you will get back. So something we're currently building in our own travel platform is, from a reporting perspective, you do the entry and you get the output immediately. Just to be more predictive, more analytical, and more of, let's say, a dashboard perspective, right? I don't need all the small details. I need to have a clear overview.
Okay, thank you, yes, thank you all. So, okay, thank you. So coming to the last question, and we still have to do the Q&A. So one piece of advice to organize currently looking into travel expense, what would it be?
If you want to start a project or trying to redo that, look at the responsibilities, the roles you have in the company, and always include the user, not only the tech geeks, you know, always the user. That's my piece of advice.
Nice one.
Yeah, I mean, I can only add there, right? Always, what you mentioned earlier, like from a use case perspective, for who are we doing it? We have different personas we are serving. You are way much more traveler than myself, and we are different personas in a potentially similar company. So think from that perspective, and indeed, don't forget about driving the adoption because it's all about the experience. Sure, on the back end side for the finance team, for the IT team, for the HR teams, but definitely also for the employees.
All right, thank you, Koen.
And to complete with that, my main element here is kill the complexity, break the silos, right? Because even though if you have your own technology, so you have proprietary technology you want to manage, or if you are, let's say, blending a model with two companies working closely together, or staying on your island, but staying on your island, you won't survive. So break the silos, work together in any way, but that will definitely, let's say, where you need to go.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so close collaboration and then user experience, and don't forget the user. That is key to remind. Okay, then coming to the Q&A, and I see we don't have too much time left, but I think we can still do two questions that came in from the audience. First question, and whoever wants to answer, please do so. First one. I have a terrible expense management process at my company, but management doesn't seem to care about the user experience. How can I get buy-in from my manager to improve the travel process? Christian?
Wow. It really depends on what terrible is, really what it means. But I mean, obviously, and there's no rocket science answer to this. I'm sorry, I'm afraid. But I would like or try to objectivize the conversation. Like, if it's a terrible experience, is one, but what does it do in terms of timings? How much time do the travelers, the users, spend on the system? Which parties are involved in terms of what's the auditing flow? How many maybe if you think about approvals, how many rejections do you actually have? Do you really need the approval? And if yes, at which stage of the process? Could you maybe identify systems, IT systems, which could talk directly to each other, maybe in the same environment, like in the SAP environment or whatever? So really objectivize, try to show the quick wins. I think that's what management always likes to do, and try to make clear that there's a monetary benefit. I think that's in the end, and there is, there will be, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the last one, I mean, because you still want to answer the other question, like indeed, you need to make it visible. What is the impact in this case for management? Because if it hurts them, bottom line, top line, I mean, we have a different conversation, and they will act way more quicker.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Well, that was exactly what I wanted to say, right? How important is travel? How much are you spending? And what is actually the the impact for the company, right? If you're spending $10 million per year on travel, right? Does it have impact? Yes, it does. Trust me. So there's someone in the big iron tower over there. He will be watching. Trust me. But it's more the there's so many stakeholders involved here, and people sometimes do underestimate that. You got HR, but who owns a typical policy? Is it finance, or is it the company finance department that says, "Listen, we have an agreement for our ERP system. You get something specifically for free as another tool you need to use."
Yep.
So again, everybody's working on individual islands again, and that's the hard thing. As an employee, you want to have something more easy to use, which you're happy to use, and therefore be more compliant, and again, be a happy employee and traveler. Make the connections, because if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck in your own world, and that's not going to help anyone.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so takeaway would be for the person who asked it, break down this. Make sure that you do the business case, do the numbers, but also understand who is deciding upon the solution, and know also how to talk to that person and network internally to make it happen. And then last question, really quick, 1 minute. Breaking silos sounds easy to say in theory, but how can you practically encourage breaking silos? Who wants to take this one? Last one.
I'm just being handed the microphone.
Okay, Christian.
Take this. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Phew. I mean, what was the question? Breaking down silos.
Yeah,
how
do
do
you do it practically? Because it sounds easy to do, but
it's really coming back to people, like the people who are sitting on those silos. And sorry to say, there are some of them out there which are just not approachable for any collaboration or whatever, because they have a fear of they might lose impact, they might lose control, they might I don't know, fear the work or something involved with such an exercise. So I guess you would really need to think about what's the motivation. And then what we recently learned in another use case was who is sitting there in terms of who's the person, and try to derive a persona in order to find a way, a tactical approach, how to communicate with him. And that's really going then a bit spilling over into psychology, and I think leaving the topics we're discussing right here. But I think that's something we really need to have a close look on who you're talking to, what he's motivated by, and I guess you don't have any management buy-in if you ask this question, because otherwise you might have had a different approach and angle to it. But also show, again, relating to the question before, like what's the benefit in there, like direct spend, like indirect spend. I mean, indirect spend is always like a tedious thing to discuss in some companies, like those costs are not going away. So this is how I would like to approach it, to understand, and then try to trickle down and to really break down in those nitty-gritty holes you can drill, and then break the whole thing down. That's the only way I would, in that short moment, try to answer that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I see Gijs also wants to add like two small things here. Like eventually, if you want to break down silos internally, put everyone in the same room. Like communicate. It's just so simply. If we want to discuss something out with the four of us, and we all representing different department, let's sit down and let's discuss. I mean, and maybe the last one, at a chair of the employee. Let them, I mean, eventually we do it for them, I mean, when it comes to this experience, right? So, and then we have a different conversation. We need to solve the use case and not solve my departmental issue. And that's typically the problem, and that typically can be solved by talking to... But communication.
Agree, thank you. No, we often see, let's say failure of specific projects coming from the fact that there is no sponsorship, right? Without sponsorship from C-level or whatever, you're not going to make a good success story. So for what we do, what we try to engage when we, let's say, do change management, right? Because, implementing is one thing. You implement a tool, we let our HR department do the mapping towards the expense tool or to the travel tool. Nice, we have the connectivity. Great. No, because I think the stakeholder element here and the sponsorship to collaborate, indeed, the communication. If you don't do that, then the sponsorship doesn't, let's say, he doesn't see that. It's not visible for him. So in this case, it's really up to the, if you own one of the specific elements here, I think it's up to that person. But also from companies, I'm procurement, I'm finance, I need to procure. I need to buy, right? I need to buy. I want to make that saving because then I get my personal incentive because I'm a buyer, right? So that's of course relevant.
Yeah.
But does that bring and I think that's also a role for us as vendors, providers, or to break that element here, because what we try to do, if I speak to a company, yes, I'm a sales guy, I need to sign contracts, good. But for me, the reason for success, I want that company to trade with us, right? To have that partnership. And to do long term, of course. But to do that, I need to involve their whole organization. So first thing, who's your sponsor, right? Who are all the other stakeholders, right? When we provide them with, okay, what's your implementation plan? How long does it take? People sometimes think, yeah, it takes 2 weeks. No, it doesn't, right? It maybe takes 10 weeks, maybe 12, maybe 6. Really depends on your company culture. And if you don't provide them with the right tools, like, from your finance department, we typically expect 3 hours per week. From your IT department, we expect roughly that. Make sure you map internally those stakeholders, get them involved. So really that big advice would be put them indeed on the room. And that's a crucial element.
Yep.
One quick addition, it's really a quick one. I came across it, Stephen Covey, you might know him. It's a great read. It's an older read though, but I think it's still a great read. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the key lessons I learned from this book was understand first and then be understood. Like take the others in, talk to your opponent, understand what you just were explaining a lot. So I don't need to cover that again. But understand first and then make yourself understood. And I think that might be, it's sometimes a little game changer. Yeah.
Internally and externally.
Yeah. I think we can go on like this, can we?
Yes. But so thank you for sharing and answering these questions. I hope that the people in the audience will have received some nice advice also, and that it was valuable to them. Nothing rests me but thanking our dear panelists for joining today, for making the travel. Don't forget to expense it. And also to the people at home, thank you for being such a lovely, engaging audience, and we look forward to seeing you back at our next event.